making your psychology part of your process is an absolute must. You can watch paint dry, you can trade, man. But I had to constantly evaluate the people that I was taking down the river. It's like the plan is to take your money, and you gotta think like the thief, not to have your money stolen.
Today we have an interview with Bookmap Trader, where we will go over trading psychology, our personal trading pitfalls, and how anyone can get into trading with the right amount of drive. Hope you guys enjoy.
It is definitely not for everybody, and it's a very difficult business. And I think that if you're extremely motivated to be successful, then I would like to be kind of a place to like, okay, spend the next 30 days, take this, do this, do this, do this, and all that will get you the prime to where you know how the markets work. That's the biggest thing, I think, is people want to come into trading with the ideal that they have the ability to extract and play with the market, but most people really don't understand how the market works. From a fundamental basis, like the buying, the selling, what causes prices to go up, what causes prices to go down on the finite, on the macro, on the micro level, on that day-to-day thing. How does the market actually function? It's all about, supply and demand, buying and selling. And, that's all. There's nothing more to it. We put so much, we put indicators in there. We put all the things that we think that it is. But the reality is it's nothing more than, people buying and selling. Now, it's a lot more complicated than that. But the reality is if you got somebody, a big hedge fund that's dumping something and they've got 50 million contracts to dump, well, guess what? It's going to go down, and there's not a freaking thing that you and I can do about it. There's not a freaking indicator. There's nothing that we can tell that's going to tell us when that's going to stop. You just got to recognize that selling ensues, and when it stops, the market will go back up. It's that simple. But reading that context is the hard part,
Exactly.
And I think that's where most newbies come in, is they don't understand that concept that, hey, it's all about buying and selling. It's all about what's happening there at that moment. Everything else is just bullshit ways of mapping where it's been. So my journey has been all about discovering that it's all about price action and nothing else matters.
Yeah, that's why I always try to push people to go towards like auction market theory, at least learn that, because I feel like that's a good baseline to understand supply and demand. So it kind of all leads into each other. It's just learning the basics, the fundamentals.
Exactly.
Which is very daunting, but
It is. And there's so many ways to start, but I think of it like you are you familiar with the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi? Yeah, the wax on, wax off, I think that's what trading is like. It's like, the first day it's like it's wax on. And whatever that might be is just, look for, a specific instance here. So, if you want to come into market, say, okay, look for sustained selling in the market, and how do you know that? Well, here's what it looks like. Look for that pattern and only look for that pattern and spend the next 5 days looking for that pattern. And then, next week we're going to look for, the opposite of that, and so forth and so on. And like you were saying earlier, with our brains are trained to do whatever we train them to do. And if we train them to look for one specific setup and only that setup, we're going to get really, really good at identifying that when we trade. And but that requires a lot of work, requires a lot of patience. And trading, for most people, they want to come in and they want it to be exciting and glamorous and yada yada yada. And it's not that, man. It's sitting there watching paint dry. If you can watch paint dry, you can trade, man, because that's the whole secret to it. You're good at watching paint dry because you got to be a patient mofo. You got to be, you gotta be disciplined. And for me, I'm still still not disciplined enough to take it to the next level. That's been my biggest thing. I'm glad you're talking about psychology today because that's really the harbinger of us all, I believe.
Oh yeah, man. Being mindful has been my main focus lately. Just understanding why I make my decisions, why I make my actions, and that's really helped out a lot. Just because, let's say I get into a trade, I've been using a TradeZilla. I don't know if you heard of that. It's like a trading journal. But
I
I'll
have,
use
yeah.
that to, yeah, I'll get my trade and then I'll start journaling immediately my thoughts and emotions. And I usually do that in my Discord, but actually putting it somewhere where it's mine, I can put all my thoughts, and it really makes me think, why'd you do that? And then I can review it and be like, that's still not a good reason. It's
Yeah,
the
I
things
know.
we make up just to move on in that moment in time is amazing. We really just try to make any excuse to get a little action sometimes.
Yeah, we do, man. I blew out a funded account not too long ago, and it was just because I was forcing trades. Just wanted to trade, hadn't traded in a while, and uh, only had a couple hours before I had to go to work, and and I thought I saw a setup, but the reality was I was just making shit up and wanted to trade,
Yeah.
and I got in revenge trade mode, man. And next thing I know, I'm like, holy crap! I just blew out an account, and that was really for me. That was tough because I hadn't done that in a while, and it just it's kind of like I think of it now. I didn't think of it like this a couple of weeks ago, but I think of it now is that a consistent trader is, and I've never been this person. I've never, well, I can't say that. I was addicted to nicotine, but addicts always count from the time that they start being sober, right? And it's like with consistent trading, it's similar to that. Once you're consistent. I can be consistent for months and months and months, and then have that one day, man. And that's like falling off the wagon for an addict. You go back to that revenge trading. You go back to what you've worked so hard to discipline your mind for to do that, and that's a tough task, especially like I did a video not too long ago on trades by Matt.
Oh yeah. I think I
Um,
saw that one.
and he went 85 days, pulled out a lot of capital from the markets, and then he had his blowout. And you know, I'm not saying I'm in a similar situation, but I went through something similar and went through a blowout. And I tell you, it was a really tough kick in the nuts because Randy Howe is one of the guys I listen to. He's also got a video on how success can really mess you up too, and that's another layer to this. Is that even when you become consistent, that consistency can create in your mind a way for you to screw that up because you become complacent. That makes sense. So we start getting emotional because we get euphoric, which is just as bad as as when you're down. You get 3 bad days in a row and you're not feeling too good, man. That's the same feeling as euphoria when you're trading 3 4 days and you're up and everything because it's really easy to give that shit back once you get in that euphoric state. So, like you said earlier, trading is all about the mind, man. You gotta fight yourself every day. Kind of crazy.
Oh yeah. I love Randy Howe. I've watched, I don't know, I would say all of his videos, but most of his videos, and they're just so understanding how the mind is not meant to do trading. We're not built to look at screens all day, but overcoming that and pushing yourself to not be the fear that you would get in the wild from getting chased by a tiger would be the same you would get from losing a trade or your stop about to be hit. So overcoming that, kind of like how the military teaches you how to just run into danger.
Yeah.
It's kind of really big with discipline. There was a video I watched lately where they split discipline from discipline A and discipline B. So discipline A is like understanding that you have to get the baseline. You have to go to boot camp basically. So do the same thing every day. So take your trades. And we have to be I don't know if you ever read the book Daily Trading Coach. we have to be the coach and the trader at these points, and just moving forwards and catching yourself when you are about to fall off the ship or whatever else, staying mindful. That's been just a huge help in my experience, at least. And then it's just a fun time. You just gotta, the trades with Matt guy, he's great. He's always on live, so
Yeah,
I don't know how he even does that.
that's hard, man. I that's a lot of pressure when you trade live like that because people watching. It's kind of I jokingly have people come and ask why I don't trade live, and I've occasionally done it, but I joke and say, oh, it's kind of the same reason why I'm not a porn star, because I can't perform, with a
Yeah.
crowd. And it's true, man. It's really difficult to trade with the crowd because everything is scrutinized in at least in your head, even more so, because it's easy. And once again, it's easy to get tilted in this business, and it there's I found myself slacking off on during that time when I blew out, taking those quality steps that I used to take every morning. That I'd get up and I'd breathe, and I had a routine, and I got that to the point where it was almost unconscious that I would do it, but not. And I slacked off here and there, and it just become more habitual not to do it, at least in a conscious way. And looking back on that, that was really the downfall of losing that funded account a few months ago. Was the fact that I got off my process. Making your psychology part of your process is an absolute must.
Mm-hmm. No, you really have to live your psychology. You have to live your discipline. Yeah. That's how I was a little bit ago. I was falling off. I noticed it, so I had to kick myself in the rear, just get back to work. And now I felt like I was putting in half work, half the effort. Now you can't do that if you want to be a successful trader. This isn't a business where you just put a little bit of work in each day and it kind of comes to fruition over time. This is where you have to come show up every day, show up for yourself, and that's a lot of people don't understand that. They don't really care for that part.
No, they really don't, man. They don't. They really don't get it. And I didn't really get it for a long time either. So I get that too. But everybody gets lulled into that false sense. Like they see these gurus and like, oh, this is what it's all about. Nope, it's not.
I wasted so much time in that stage. I wish I would have had someone like me now where I can point myself in a direction, but I wasted so much time thinking, oh yeah, I can do this. $100 a day, easy. I just
Yeah.
gotta look at these indicators and it's like, man, I was so naive, but what can I really say? I'm just happy I stuck with it. I think that's the hardest part. So
That little affirmation thing, is that something? Do you have a ritual that you go through every morning?
yeah, so lately, I don't know if you saw, but I sent you that video I made. It's mostly like a breathing, I've been really into Wim Hof, so it's kind of like the same tone of Wim Hof where you watch the video, it has the intro, affirmations, a little split area where you can just let your thoughts kind of just roam around, think what you are going to do for the day. And then after I do my little video, I really recommend anyone look at it. I made it for myself, but it's useful for anyone.
I was looking
And
at it when
after that, yeah,
right before the start there. It was it had that Jack Handy feel, My gosh, you're good enough, you're smart enough. But, it is something that we've gotta get a ritual, we've gotta get into our state. Going back to, Mark Douglas, trading in the zone, and that book really doesn't come out specifically on how to get into that zone. It's more of a guideline on how to get your trading so that you can be in the zone, if that makes sense. I think that every day, and I've recommitted myself to having that breathing ritual, and tried desperately not to not undertake it before trading because it's really easy sometimes. Well, I do have a plan. The way that my morning starts, after I get all the admin stuff I call out of the way, then I start marking levels.
mm,
And my my plays are off of the previous days and the previous overnights levels. So I'm using things that have developed in the last 24 hours, basically. So I get up
Yeah.
in the morning, I mark my charts, and then I look at the overall context of the market. Are we trending, or are we trending? Or are we in a balanced state? Are we gapping down? And if we are, what's statistically, what's the odds that we're going to fill the gap, or what's the so I'm looking at all the different parameters in that, developing a plan based upon the context and the levels that I have in front of me. So I find that the more I put into that, and the more that I really focus on making sure that I understand the context, the better trades I have. And some days I get it totally wrong. You know, I'm I'm thinking long, and it comes to the levels where I'm expecting a bounce, and and it keeps continuing down, or vice versa, whatever. So yeah, it's tough, because if you don't have the context right in my strategy style, then you're really on the wrong side of the market. So for me, my plan is to figure out what the hell it's doing first.
Understandable. I've been using a kind of like a line in the sand. So if we stay above 5,500, I'm bullish, and if we break below that, I switch my trading style from rotational to more of a directional. So I found that to be very helpful because I would
How do you determine that line in the sand?
just kind of support and resistance. So if I see an area like a high volume node has been getting supported on each test, I'm as long as we stay above that, I'm bullish. And if we do break it, and say we do make a V rally where market just drops, recovers, I'm okay missing that. I don't need to catch every trade. But it's really just I posted a video, my other video I posted, the one before the meditation. That's how I showed how I come up with my levels. It's really useful. I found it because my bad habit was if market kept going lower and lower and lower, I wouldn't have an area where I'm like, oh, I'm bullish above this, and if we break below, I'm bearish. I would just be like, I want to get into this. I want to get long. I want to catch this trade, and that would just lead to multiple losses in a row for no reason. So getting rid of that bad habit has helped out. I can't immensely.
Yeah, I get that. I've worked with line in the sand. For my one thing that hurts me with a line in the sand is that I sometimes will keep trading because it is above my line in the sand, for example. Uh, but the context has changed, and I
Mm.
haven't recognized that. And I'll give you, like, was it, I forget what day it was this week, but we broke into like a brand new level, and then, man, we just sold off like a mofo, really, really, really hard.
Oh
And
yeah, I think that was like Tuesday.
yeah, and then for me, I have to, with my trading style, is that when you have a, if you're still in that context of trend, let's say it's trending up, and you're in the context trending up, but you start having this big sell off, and it comes to your level, and you go long thinking that it's going to bounce, and it just continues to sell, and it goes down to your next level, and you're still above your line in the sand, and you do that when you get stopped out, after a while, that line in the sand stopped working for me in that regard, at least with my strategy and my style of trading. So
Yeah,
I've had to really focus on how to understand the concept of a contextual shift, not just from a sell off, like, but even like going from something that maybe you may be in a balanced market most of the day, and then all of a sudden, the context shift, and now it starts to trend. Um, but sometimes that trend starts way before you notice that contextual shift, if that makes sense. And sometimes I sense that. It's been like sitting in front of these screens all these years. Sometimes I sense the fact that you can sense that the selling has lessened. The price may go down, but it's not going down with a lot of volume, and there's just no follow through, and you can kind of get a sense of that sometimes. So I'm trying to get that more formalized in my trading. This is how can I take my little spidey senses that tell me that hey, something's different now, and turn that into a a trading strategy or a trading tactic.
Mm-hmm.
And this past week, that big piercing into that high of the day, and then all of a sudden, wham bam, we sold off like really fast, really quick. I forget what day it was. May have been that Tuesday. It was may have been Thursday too. Was there something like that Thursday? Yeah. And so, but that for me, it was a day that I really I'm studying that day for the next couple weeks to really get an idea of how to recognize that context shift, because
Mm-hmm.
that happens all the time for me, that I'll be trading and I got, a trade of mine, and all of a sudden, bam, the context shifts and I didn't catch it. And that's a day that I took three losses in a row because I was in that uptrend mode and didn't recognize the sell off. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Nah, that day I had to walk away because like whenever we become directional, I'm not good at that, so I know my weakness, so I'm not even gonna try.
Well, that's awesome. I'll be honest with you, man. I think that if if you're better at what in balanced trading, or in respect to that, that's probably most the best name for it would be mean reversion. But if you're really good at mean reversion trading, and that's your strength, man. Think about this: 80% of the time, that's what the markets are doing.
Very true, very true. That's
Balance.
auction market theory. That's why I always resonated with that.
Yeah, because the behavior is going to be, now it can be disruptive, but the behavior is going to be, you're going to go from high volume node to high volume node. That's really
Mm-hmm. For
that's
sure.
really the essence of it. Price is going to go up here. It's going to visit those low volume nodes, and low volume nodes is where the opportunity is. When you get in those low volume nodes, that's when you see those rejections.
But we can get into my first question here to get the interview keep on rolling.
Okay, cool, man.
How Yeah, so how long have you been trading, and what are some key things that have kept you focused on just becoming a full-time trader?
Oh man, I've dabbled in trading since probably the late 90s, 98, and I got in right at the pretty much the tippy top of the .com era. Um I had a little background on quick. So I had worked for a decade as a whitewater river guide, and I met my wife, or I met my future wife there, and we she was a customer, and kept coming back for a few years. And after, I think it was about 4 years, she kind of hit on me. She's like, "Hey, are you got a girlfriend? Are you married? Or we get, I'd like to get together." And we had a, and it was funny because we had a really good repertoire during that 4 years. She was a tourist. She came once a year for a weekend, and during that time, we kind of jailed. We had a really good time. She's one of the people that I remembered as well. So when she came back on the last year, um, her fourth year, she was like, "Hey, we should go out. We should try this." And so we went on a date. Long story short, got married, and then we got pregnant, and then I had to grow up and quit raft guiding because there's no money in it. So moved to where we are currently here in Charlottesville, Virginia. Working the job that I'm still working, and once we got married, it just that's when trading got in, because it was like, okay, I got to get serious about life and start investing and doing all these things. And that's when I discovered trading. And trading for me was an adrenaline fix, kind of similar to whitewater. It's hard to whitewater with a baby. you know, you can't do much when you start having kids, and they're still in diapers and everything. But man, they were really good at like hanging out my arms while I was trading. You know what I mean? And my wife and I, we lived in an area where we didn't have any family, so we worked opposite hours to take care of the kids. And my work shift didn't start till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I had all day to trade. And the kids at that age, they were babies, so they would hang out. I would sit there and talk to them. They would be hanging out with me on my lap and everything. And eventually, they got to be toddlers and doing their things and everything. But at that time, I was trading the stock market a lot, so it was not the same as the futures. Something you would hold for a while and did really well for a while. Then the market crashed, and I did even better because I learned from a guy in a trading room how to short, and all was well, man. I was king of the mountain. This is where one of those things where success kind of breeds that complacency, and so I did really well shorting the market up until late 2003. I don't forget. I don't remember the exact year, but I think it was 2003. Um, and the market had been going down and down and down and down and down and down for a while. And I had a big ego at this point in time, had the biggest account, and decided that I was going to go all in shorting because on CNBC at the time, Maria Bart, I can't say her last name, Bart, Maria B, who's now on Fox News, but she was a correspondent for CNBC, was sitting on the New York Stock Exchange and basically said something to the effect that we should all just go short so bad. And that was the exact moment when the market bottomed. I mean, it literally, the next day it started to climb and and that was 2003, I think, and it just kept going until 2008 crash. And I just decided that I was all in short, you know. And I thought that her saying that, man, that just convinced me that hey, I'm gonna retire at 40. That's that's where that's where my brain was at, man. And I shorted the hell out of the market as it climbed.
Yeah, those news agencies and everything, I feel like they kind of get told to say certain things.
Yeah.
There's that one guy, I forget his name. He does the daily news. I don't watch any of them, but I feel like they kind of get people to do certain things so they can trap them and use that
Oh yeah, man.
trap
Always.
volume.
I watched something that was really good this weekend. I'll find it and put it in your link there so you can share it if you want to. Um, but it was an interview with a trader that worked for these large firms, and he was just talking about the institutional trading and how they would use these reports to get liquidity. Um,
Mm.
and it's very fascinating, but it's something I'll definitely share on you. Um, but after the market kept going up and up and up, I gave most of that back, and then I set out for a while. I got back into trading after the financial crisis of 2008 for a little bit, and I dabbled back and forth, and then finally in 2019 I got back into it and have been nonstop since then. Not full time because I still work full time and trade part time, but now I'm fully committed to this is going to be what I do the rest of my life. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Nah, you can really start at any age, any time. Also, that's the greatest thing about trading. A lot of
Absolutely.
people see it as very daunting to get into it when you're been looking at stocks for years and years and years, but it's really not that. It's always here, and that's a lot of people always try to rush it. You don't need to rush it. It takes time for everybody. We all have our own different timeline.
It does, man. And it's easy to get juice because everybody's out here. Oh, I made 15K in one day. I made 20K, and I'm like over here, like, hey, I made 200 and I feel great, and now I feel like shit. You know.
Nah, yeah. Compare your chapter one to someone's whole book is it really takes the fun out of trading for some people.
Yeah,
But it's always about the small steps.
it is, man. It's all about the small steps.
Oh man, so with all the trading you did back in the day, now you're here. How do you think trading has affected your psychology, and how does it really affect your psychology outside of trading?
Oh, that's a good question. I tell you that's kind of a twofold question because it's done two things for me. One, for my job, my professional life, I work in sales, so I have a job now that psychology is part of it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the same way, but I've got to use maybe not fear. I mean, that's occasional in my
Yeah.
sales, but I have to understand people's motivations and use their motivations for my desire, what I want to sell them. Now,
Mm-hmm.
big advantage for what I sell is they all want what we sell. It's big boy toys, right? It's just a matter of, are we buying your big boy toys from me, or are you buying your big boy toys from somebody else, right? Um, so I have to use psychology in that regard, and understanding that. Uh, uh, Interesting enough, in my whitewater days, psychology was a big component too. In that, I had to constantly evaluate the people that I was taking down the river. And if we get into a situation where they may freak out, I need to know in advance. So we were taught to look for certain personality traits in people. So if the poop goes bad, you're gonna need people to rely on. You're gonna need to, take somebody from your boat and say, hey, you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and you need to make sure you have, have that there, because some people will just freak out, uh, and and things can go bad. I mean, it's an adventure sport. I'm fortunate that I never had to um, witness a death or anything happen like that, but it has happened. It'll happen, and it's just part of the deal. But when that stuff goes down, man, it's going to be very, very similar to what we as traders go through, in that we get our juices flowing because we're in flight or fight mode when we trade. When we put on risk, it's the same as the tiger chasing us. It's the same as watching a loved one die in front of you, and being in a wilderness environment and still have to trek the hell out of there and do the evac. And there's all kinds of mental stresses that you go through there. So all that stress is very similar to what you encounter as a trader. So I'm fortunate that I had the training in my 20s as a river guide, and then I'm fortunate I had my training as a sales professional in that regard, and that better prepared me for as a trader. But I was still struggling with that today, is because I can go 85 days in a row being consistent and blow up in one day, just like Matt. And that's the hard part to our business, and that's the thing we all got to overcome. And I'm fortunate that I've had a lot of training. And I'm fortunate too that I actually know that, because I think a lot of traders don't experience that in the same way.
So yeah, I just wanted to go into how you're talking about you had to see people on the whitewater rafts and all that job. You had to observe them. Is there any psychological pitfalls you see people coming into trading that do you observe anything like that, or did you observe anything in yourself where you just like, oh, this is something very common that I think a lot of people would do?
I think that people don't know what they're truly getting in when they trade. I think you've watched Randy Howe, right? You've got his basic premise of us as evolutional beings that have not evolved to trade money, and that we have to discipline ourselves. So I think all traders come into this with no freaking clue that the psychology is all that really matters. If I had to do it over again, I think the first thing that I would do, going back to that Mr. Miyagi thing that I said earlier in our conversation about the wax on, wax off thing, is that I would get people to understand psychology. I would try to figure out exercises so they could develop their mental discipline, and then put them in front of the screen.
Definitely,
You
definitely.
know, if I was an institution like SMB, for example, are you familiar with SMB Capital? Or
Oh yeah, one
a
good
firm?
trade.
Yeah, and if you look at their training program, man, they do a lot of training, man, that's not about trading. And they look very deeply into a person's psychology before they take on any of their traders. So what they do in that regard is probably a pretty good lesson for all of us, you know.
Oh, definitely. They have a lot of actual psychologists on their board, and they're just there to help out the traders because it's not all about just making money and executing. It's about controlling your emotions. So, have you noticed any specific psychological changes you noticed since you started trading? So, any small habits you've formed or anything similar to
I mean, have I improved my mental acuity in that regard?
that?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to. I'm much more calm in a trade. Part of that is being able to release your emotional sides. Part of that is having a plan, and a plan brings you confidence in that trade. Um, if if it's actually a trade that you've worked on consistently and you've planned for and you've put the time and effort in to make sure that this is a key level and that you're looking for your particular triggers and you follow your process and it works. You know that to me solidifies the discipline. And so I believe that habitualizing, making it a habit to always follow those trades is what you got to do. But in order to do that, at least for my style, is that I've got to understand where we're at in the context. Otherwise, sometimes I can be like following my process and be like, oh, well, I should have been thinking it was a downtrend, and I kept going long, you know. And that's kind of harping what I was saying earlier. That's the reason why I'm looking at that day in particular is that I think that that day represents a fundamental change in the markets, and I want to understand that process. What happened there? Is it something I can spot, or if it's just something I'm just going to have to get better at visualizing the context and seeing it, or was there clues? I don't know. So I'm gonna delve into that because that's one of those days that totally blew me out of the water. Because like what you were saying earlier, you know, we're on a trend day and you tend to not do well in trend days, and I get that because I'm kind of like that too. I like the bounces off of support, you know, moves and going, oh, okay, here we go. This is a really good support level. Let's see if we can get that bounce. But
So going into that, are there any ideas or key concepts you focus on for your strategy, such as I look for auction market theory rotations or higher lows with the trap sellers and stuff like that?
you know, I incorporate auction market theory. That's kind of like, you know, auction market theory is kind of like, um, you know, when you go to anything, you got to have a fundamental basis. So understanding
Yeah.
that is a first and a must. And then for me, like I said earlier, context is key. I got on, you know, and then basically the market's in either two states. It's either balanced and it's going to be mean reverting, you know, or it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be trending. And of course, it can trend up or it can trend down, depending on that. But first and foremost, I got to understand the context. And once I understand context fundamentally, and sometimes it's like if I don't know, the biggest thing that I need to do is just like, well, I don't know what context I'm in. I don't know if I'm trending because we go outside of those lines, but we come back in, and you know, and it turns into mean reversion. And you know, sometimes you just need to stay the heck out of the market because it's not doing anything that you can do unless you're scalping. You know.
How have you developed your trading strategy over time, and like what have you used to test it?
Good question. First of all, I think that up until in my trading head, I've got two time periods really. Um, um, And that was in May. Well, no, let's say it started in February of 2022. And everything before then, I'm going to say I was a gambler.
Mm.
And anytime after that is when I truly became a trader. And the difference is that when I discovered Tom B and Bookmap, and started listening to his um, daily streams, I realized that I'm rolling the dice, nothing more, man. I had no, I mean, what I thought was strategy was not. It was just randomness that I had fooled myself into thinking that I was actually trading, and the reality is, um, that I didn't have the statistics to back up the trades I was pulling off, and so understanding Tom really kind of fit everything that I went back in my head and was like, hey, Mark Douglas talked about this and this and this and this, and it honed in on me is that really, um, the best way to trade is going back to what Mark Douglas said is that you find your setups and then you're going to figure out if you have an edge in that particular setup. And that's exactly what Tom was talking about. And and that all that kind of really coalesced for me. And I started going, okay, what trades can I do? And I started looking at, okay, every night we have on the ES, and I trade only ES, of course, right now. Uh, we have an overnight high, overnight low. We have the overnight VPOC, and we have every day we also have value areas form, and every day we also have the initial balance, which is the first hour's high and low. So those three different setups and all their different variations of setups are what I use to trade off of. So I trade off of value areas. I trade off of the overnight VPOC. That's one of my bread and butter trades as well. Um, and I'd say I could probably do my whole career on nothing more than trading overnight VPOC from here on out. And that setup happens 3 to 5 times a week, and it's I don't know, it's better than 80%. That's in the right context. Um,
Okay, for sure.
so, but yeah, my focus is only on trade setups that I have an edge on based upon statistical probabilities that I've gathered over this time. And before 2022, I was just gambling. I had
Yeah.
no rhyme or reason. I thought, here's a setup, and it was a chart pattern, but I didn't know if that chart pattern, if it truly was an edge or not. I'd just trade it, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I didn't know if 80% of the time when we're balanced, it works out, but it only works out 40% of the time when we're in a trend, right? Or something of that nature. So I didn't know those stats, and therefore, because I didn't know that, I was just gambling, hoping and praying.
It takes a lot to admit that because I think we all started off just gambling like that. Even Carmine of Rosado, he talks about how in the past he would see these people that were trading options, they were giving call outs, take those trades, and we all see these symmetrical triangles and everything, but understanding how we can actually get into those trades and identifying those trades are just completely different. So
Right.
I can identify at least 20 trades a day, but are they quality? Are they going to actually follow in with line with what I want to look for each one? Kind of replicate it. So that's a big thing for me at least.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it. I mean, let's flip the switch here for a second. All right. Imagine you are an institutional hedge fund or an institution
Mm.
that has you know um, pretty high stakes, no problem. And let's say that you're looking at a chart pattern that that retail traders are all bought into, a wedge or a head and shoulders, or pick a chart, right? And you've got all of this liquidity you need to get rid of. Let's say that you bought low and you're looking to liquidate your position. And you see this head and shoulders and you can see that the price is starting to break out, right? And it's like, hey, or break down or whatever the case may be there. But if you're an institution and you know that the retail traders are doing this and you know where their liquidity is at, you can easily manipulate the market in these short term areas to push it over the edge. So, like, let's say it comes to support area, right? And you know that all of these retail traders probably got their stops right below that, and you want that liquidity. It's not hard to push it down when you got enough capital to do that at 12 o'clock in the day when everybody's at lunch. And when you think of it like that, and you think about how where the liquidity is, where all that volume is, when you think of it like that and how the market works and that understanding that, if you've got stops below support area, they're going to get taken out because there's a huge pool of liquidity there. And when you can understand that the market is moving from liquidity pool to liquidity pool, and that's when you look at your volume profile and you see those high volume nodes that form over time. That's the reason why they keep coming back. That's where the liquidity is. That's where we keep taking. That's where those institutions and those big players, where the sharks are getting the guppies. They keep coming back to where the guppies are. And so I think for me in 2022, not only was it like, hey, here's a statistical probability that I haven't been doing. The reason why I've been a gambler is because I haven't been thinking like the casino. And the casino is going to go where the most money's at. And in this case, we as traders want to go where the most liquidity is at, and being on the right side of that. So a lot of ways that I look at the market, but at the end of the day, understanding auction market theory, how that works, how the market works, putting that into context with what's happening. I keep coming back to that day where we had that big sell off, and just recognizing that when you see a big move up, then all of a sudden you get to the top of that and you start seeing some significant sell volume coming in. I've seen that over the years, over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and and it's still hard sometimes understand the change in that context.
Context is definitely a key there. It's just it's definitely harder in the moment because we're like you said with Tom B and everyone else, we're kind of just apes. We're just here, and we just gotta be able to control that. With Tom B, have you noticed anything else that from his what he teaches, what he try to tell everyone to do? Have you noticed that you adapted that style a little more?
Oh, sure, man. I'm probably I don't want to say a clone, but everything that I do right now is rooted in is rooted in and around what he teaches or what he talks about. Now he does a lot more, and I keep trying to get into it because he's got so much things that he is thinking inside of his head that I don't, you can't overcome experience. And when you sit there and watch for 20, 30 years, and you get to that point where you can feel the market, it's hard to explain that in words. And he has the ability like, oh, well, the context is shifted here, and you're like, really? How in the hell did you know that? Like, what clue was it? And he'll explain it, and you'll be like, yeah, I didn't see that. That's pretty wild. But that's experience, man. It's from sitting in front of that screen, from seeing that phenomena over and over and over and over and over, and getting that unconscious competence, as he likes to call it. That's the four stages. There's the um, that you don't know, and then you start to know, but you don't have the ability to physically do it without thinking about it. Then you get to the point where you can actually start doing something without thinking about it, right? And that's kind of like driving a car. When you're driving a car and you get home and you're like, God, I don't even remember the trip. Deep in thought, and I don't remember making all those turns. But that's an unconscious competence, and that's where he's at. is that he can trade without even thinking about it in that regard, because he looks at it and go, oh, this is, I can feel the seller exhaustion or the buyer exhaustion here or whatever.
Yeah, he's a invaluable resource. He's one of the treasures of YouTube.
Yeah,
And
and I tell you, one thing that he says, and this always it thinks I think about this a lot. And if you think about it, it works a lot in your brain too. But he always says the market's got to go down to go up. It's got to go up to go down. And that makes a lot of sense, because what happens when it goes down below a support level? Breaks stop run, gets all that liquidity, and then it goes the opposite way, right? And so it's got to go down there to grab that liquidity to go up. Same thing is true. It's got to go up, grab that liquidity to go down.
for sure. And just, the hedge funds can just, hey, put this little news report in, put these numbers out while we're going down. Yeah, it gets everyone else, like you in the past, you're like, oh, these numbers are bad, let's go short. And they don't understand. That's what the plan was.
Yeah. It's like the plan is to take your money, and you gotta think like the thief, not to have your money stolen. You know, that's really it.
So, you've been watching Tom B, so Bookmap, I'm guessing, is your main platform. Is there any reason you prefer Bookmap over other platforms like Sierra Charts or NinjaTrader?
Well, I discovered Bookmap. Like I said, I used to trade uh, with just candlesticks and a dome and time and sales, and and 4 or 5 other things on my thing. And the reason why Bookmap resonated with me, it was a visual representation of like everything I was looking at, but on one screen. You know, um, I have time and sales on one screen. Now, time and sales is not the same. It's not a bunch of numbers running up. It's now a big ball, and that ball increases in size, right? It's like, okay, well, more volume. It makes sense to me. I don't have to physically know the number. I just need to know if there's a lot of volume there or not. All right. I have the trading dome on the same screen. I have all my notations on the same screen. I have, the price action up and down, and I can zoom in, I can zoom out, and so it's basically every tool that I use, but in one package. Now, I do have a higher time frame chart that I look at outside of Bookmap, but I am a day trader, so I'm not trading swings, and it certainly could help there. But I scalp. I sometimes will go in and grab a point, sometimes 2 points, but I'm looking for something specific, and then I'm hoping to get like a medium. Like for example, on a scalp like that, I see when I'm watching Bookmap, I see exhaustion one form or the other. And so at certain key levels, when I see exhaustion, let's say it's going up, and all of a sudden it comes to a key level, and I start to see the buyers exhaust, because nobody wants to buy at the top, and I can see the buyers exhaust, so I can go short really quick, have a very low risk, because if it goes above that, I can get out really quick, take a 2 or 3 tick loss to get 5 to 6 ticks pretty quick, and um, and that's all because I can see in that brief moment that the exhaustion has kicked in, and then we get a swift move pretty quick in one direction or another, and then I get out really quick, and there you go, and I get a 2 points and move on, and can do that 4 or 5 times a day when I see those opportunities. But that's all because I'm looking at Bookmap, and I can see that exhaustion. I can't see the same thing on a candlestick chart. There might be people who can, and I'm certainly now that I'm more familiar with that concept, I can probably spot it easier on a um, candlestick chart, but I can really see it at a glance on Bookmap.
Yeah.
You know,
Nah, it's all about how we can visualize it and how we can make it easier for ourselves.
it
I've
is.
been finding
Trading's like anything else, man. I mean, we all. I don't know if you got a girlfriend or not, but some prefer blondes, brunettes, redheads. We have all the different body styles. Some like that's really skinny. That, and who knows? I mean, and everything in between. And I'm sure women prefer height, taller guy versus shorter guy. And it's all preferences, but it's all about what gives us an edge at the end of the day. And so I think less is more personally. I see some people's charts that's got a million things on the screen. I'm like, how in the hell can you do anything with that?
no,
uh,
it's that's how I'm going through that phase right now. I basically like my footprint and my volume profiles. I basically removed all that just because I use a Renko chart. And that's all I need. I can
yeah.
see everything from that, and I use Delta by price, cumulative Delta. That's those two things. Simplifying it, cutting it down, cutting so many different error points you could have, decision points,
Yep. And
getting
you know
those out
what?
of the way.
And what you just described, man. In its essence, you know what that is: price and volume. Price and volume. That's all you need. Your own indicator, man.
Oh yeah, and that intuition we feel sometimes it's definitely real, but you can't learn how to hone it and understand it why you're feeling that. Like I noticed when I had hesitation, I was spotting a trade and I was fearful because in the past that trade might have brought some losses, but now I've improved. I know that hesitation will lead to a possible entry, so I use those emotions that I feel deep down to help out now, and that's been really useful. But still, just price and volume. We can have all of our emotions, but it doesn't change what it is. So, do you have any advice on someone trying to get into trading, trying to use Bookmap, or trying to trade in a similar style to you? Any resources or setups or anything like that?
Well, I tell you, everything that I do can be found at Tom B's Traders Lab on the Discord, Bookmap Discord. Um, I mean, he's got like 62 pages of different Bookmap setups, and I use, like I said, I use three of them. So I haven't even gone through them all, but there's so many different trades that he does, and has a whole uh, buttload, and not every one of them are going to be applicable for days. I chose the three that are most likely to hit, and I trade mostly mornings because I work afternoons. So that's why I do the overnights. That's why I do the value areas, and that's why I do the initial bounce, because all of those are trades that generally the statistics work for them mostly in the morning. Um, and then I don't have as many afternoon trades. That's where I do a lot of scalping, because I don't have the structured trades that I have for the morning.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I've cut myself off from 9 a.m., maybe 8:30, depending on how the market looking. 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m. to about 11, so around noon. I cut myself off because I know unless I formulate a plan midday, I'm just gonna sit there and want to look for trades, and that's just not. You gotta understand the context of the time you're trading, because I understand the context when I wake up. I have my morning plan, so I'm trying to think about considering putting an afternoon plan. Just treat it like a different part of the day. But it's definitely just don't want to sit there and trade.
No,
That's
overtrading is bad.
that's what a lot of people get caught in because they
Yeah, man, it's all about that juice. That's all about that juice. You don't want that juice. Juice is bad. All bad. Nothing could come of getting emotionally charged in trading. Both the euphoria side and the other side. Um, because you get all set up, man, and get going. Um, you know.
No, I feel like taking time during the day to do some Wim Hof breath or some affirmation. It doesn't all need. It can be done in the morning, but I feel like it's really important to do it throughout the day, so you don't get lost in your thoughts or get lost in anything. You bring yourself back to center, reset, get back to it. I feel like a lot of people don't do that. They kind of just get their trades done for the day, and then they're drained basically. So they're like, oh, I'll just keep on doing this. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage there, and you gotta take a break.
Yeah.
So you do your Bookmap streams and all that. How would you say YouTube has affected your trading, your life, and your community that you formed? How?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I tell you one of the things that book the Bookmap stream has really done for me is it's really it's brought me in touch. I have a really good group of traders that have been around for quite a while. There's one or two that's actually um, a guy from his name is Jacob. He's from Israel, and he's been there since day one. As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, today is actually the birthday of my channel. Believe it or not. Yeah, I started in late July. Um, my kids, I was trying to figure out. I ran out of memory on my computer, and my kids were like, "Well, just start a YouTube channel." And just record, just broadcast it there, and that way you can do it. And then I started thinking, well, hey, while I'm at work, I can view it at work too. I was like, this is a win-win. This is great, and then I started doing what Tom B said, is start narrating the market. So not only would I broadcast it, but I would sit there and I would start talking about the market, and I was laughing to myself inside of my head. I'm going to date myself here, man. It's like, but I was kind of feeling like I was Howard Cosell, watching a football game, um, and next thing I know, there's like a couple people listening, and they're commenting, asking questions, and I mean, it was like within a couple months, it just there was dozens of folks out there talking and chit chatting, and we were all trading, and some of them. Uh, still there today. Some of them become good friends as well. We chit chat quite a bit, just not only through the trading, but outside of trading sometimes too. Been a few of those developed over the years. So it's been a positive for me. Um, I like the. It's a nice little side gig too. My wife um, eventually wants to come on and do some cooking. So the YouTube channel might grow for our whole family to have something in that regard. Maybe have like a little bit of a sideline thing, because my wife's a former chef and she loves to cook. So
That's great to have around. There
yeah,
you
man. So
go.
YouTube's been a big plus. I I'm fortunate that I you know how can I say this? It can be very toxic place too, and I'm fortunate that we've the community that kind of surrounds the channel and on the Discord. We're very respectful to one another and been able to really maintain that, and I'm very thankful for that, because it's I've been in a lot of places where the toxicity was so bad that it's like you couldn't even trade. There was no trading
Oh, for
going.
sure. No, I know what you're talking about. So, as a building this community, has that changed your perspective on trading at all, or trading psychology? Seeing all these different people come into your group.
Yeah, and it's in ways that it's hard to put it in a words, but one of the I think one of the biggest benefits that I get out of it is having when people ask me questions on what I do, in that it helps me kind of articulate in ways that I make me think better of my trading. And I mean, and I don't mean that think better trading. I mean more of like, it allows me to look at my trading from a perspective that's different than my own. I have to answer a question from somebody else, because then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, how, I go back to myself, what you were asking about earlier, my sales job, in that I sell, consumer electronics to people, and some of it's pretty complex, and I have to simplify that a lot of times for folks, and so that's it's kind of a skill set that I have, is to make something complex more simple, or to make something that somebody just doesn't understand be understandable for them, using whatever context I need to there. If that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
That's why I think trading is so useful, or not trading, having a YouTube channel focus on trading, because I have these thoughts in my head, I'm sure you do too, and I understand what I'm thinking, but when I have to say it out loud, it makes me have to kind of focus more and simplify it for other people, like you said.
Yeah.
And it helps out a lot. So that's why you asked earlier what's my main goal, my YouTube and everything. I think it's you make these videos about your certain systems, your certain setups. I make them for people. I'm also making them for myself so I can enforce these ideas, understand why I think these ideas. And I think that's one big thing about having the communities. You're trading by yourself. You're doing the same thing. No one's ever trying to question you. No one's ever trying to see if you're actually being realistic while you're trying to trade. I think definitely having that is very helpful.
Yeah.
So we're about an hour in now. Uh, what would be your top 3 books or recommendations about getting into trading or trading psychology?
Trading in the zone. Best loser wins. And I have to go look on my shelf, but there's a book that I read a few years ago, um, about mindfulness. That and to be honest with you, man, it was on my reading list here recently. I just haven't picked it up again because I wanted to retouch on it again. I'll have to get the name to you. I don't remember the author off the top of my head. It's been a while since I read it, but I was wanting to come back and read to it. But the premise of that book, I mean, I think everybody knows Trading Zone. Um, Everybody knows Best Loser Wins. Uh, Purpose of this book, the mindfulness, for me at that time, when I picked it up, it was like right before I started back to trading back in 2019. I was trying to figure out, and this is pre-COVID. My wife was a chef, and she was looking possibly exit the chef world. She was getting to that stage where she didn't really want to do that hard work all the time. Wasn't in that mode to continue working, 80 hours a week. She just, at certain times a year, her job was, she catered real high end weddings. So there was, many weeks in the spring and many weeks in the fall when it was going crazy. And so she'd be 80 hours a week for 6 to 10 weeks, 4 or 5 times a year. Right. Um, and she'd have some downtime here and there, but for the most part, she was burnt. And we were both going through, trying to figure out where our next stage in life was. We had our oldest boys were going off to college. Um, we only had one left. So life was changing for us. And I read that book, and the mindfulness was just for me. I was so scattered at that time. Was just to put your focus into what you really want in life. And I started really thinking about what I wanted. Wanted to make sure my continue strong bonds of family. And now that my wife and I were getting older, and we were also went through a long period of time where we really didn't know each other. We were working a lot of opposite hours, doing opposite things. Running kids here, running kids there. She's working her stuff. I'm working my stuff. And that book just allowed me to take a step back and repurpose my life in a way of what putting doing what I know is truly important instead of doing all the stuff that seems to be urgent but not as important. If that makes sense. Um, yeah. And, so anyway, it's been a while since I read it, and I can't remember the author, but it's a very thin book. It's I think the name of it would be Mindfulness, Purpose and Playfulness. I think was the title, but I'll come back to you. I'll get that to you after after I go up and find it on my bookshelf there.
Oh, you're good. That was perfect. Trading zone investors win. Have you noticed these influence your trading style or
Oh yeah,
anything
I
going with your mindset?
the Mark Douglas stuff. I mean, I won't say that every day it comes into play, but every week I go back to something that he said. Looking at his quotes and everything, and I read the book. I don't read it like from cover to cover anymore. But I will go a couple times a year and pick up that book or listen to it on an audiobook, and I'll skip to certain chapters that I feel that I might need, if that makes sense. So that's something that I go to. That's more of a guidebook in some ways. I even though Tom hasn't written a book, I listen to his streams on a regular basis. There's always some little nugget in there because like I said, he's got more experience that I don't think he even articulates, or it's so much there that unconsciously that he sees stuff. If we were sitting there beside him and watching him trade, we'd be like, "What do you see there?" And he goes, "Oh, well, it's just blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't see that." It's just. But I think nothing beats sitting here and watching the market over and over and over and over and over, and just becoming. Yeah, get the screen. Nothing is going to replace screen time. Period. That's the best book.
Nah, I have a little pamphlet I made. I read it every morning. It's a bunch of quotes by him, but one of my favorite he says is the consistency you seek is in your mind, not in the markets. I feel like that kind of hits home with a lot of people, with me at least. Because if you can't
Absolutely.
be consistent, your discipline, your thoughts, then how are you going to expect to be disciplined anywhere else in life, even with trading?
Exactly. 100%.
So, I think we've been at it for about an hour and a half now. Are there, where can people find you and interact with your community and your content?
Well, on YouTube, you can, it's Bookmap Trader, Discord. The room is called Trader Grow Zone, and I do have a Twitter, which is at Swimus. But the YouTube is where I'm at. YouTube and Discord is where I mostly hang. I I don't. I'm new. I'm still relatively new to Twitter. I didn't really start doing that until about 2022. I had an account, but I didn't do anything with it. And then once I started streaming, it was just a way to say, "Hey, anybody's interested, come check out these streams." And occasionally post some stuff there. Repost. I do a lot of reading of other traders' content, but um, it's hard to find value on Twitter sometimes. You know,
Yeah,
it's a
definitely.
big
I haven't really.
it's a big time suck for me. I get on there. I'm like, oh, I just scrolled 30 minutes, and I'm like, why am I reading? I want. Okay, this is garbage. you know,
That's the day and age we're in. Everything just it's so easy to just keep on scrolling and look through the stuff that we find is important because we're hunter gatherers and we're
Yeah.
just hunting for something that we key nuggets here and there, but we don't realize how much time we're wasting. That's kind of sad, but
It is. It is. That's why I don't like doing it. Big time
yeah,
suck.
how
So
do
I don't do Twitter too much other than occasionally I'll find I have a couple people I've whittled down that will post some good stuff. And there's a couple of guys that I read that will have the daily quotes. That's really one of the things that I get, like Zen moments or, something you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty useful. And sometimes they're like, okay, that was a time suck because I got sucked into 30 minutes of scrolling. I shouldn't
it's all
have.
about the intention that we
Yeah,
bring into it.
you're not wrong there, man.
Do, so, do you have any upcoming projects or content that you plan on making for newer traders or anything similar to that?
Well, great question. I make videos from time to time on phenomena I think that kind of stands out would be helpful for traders. And one of the things I'm working on right now is I keep coming back to that Thursday that when we had that big down day. And there was a time right around I'm going back to what we talked about earlier. You mentioned about having a line in the sand,
Yeah.
and there was a moment where price came above, and I'm not going to call it a line in the sand, but I have a couple of maybe markers might be a good term for this. I haven't quite articulated this yet, so you might be getting this firsthand here. But one of the things that I've noticed, and one of the things that's hard for me, is to spot when we go from balance to trending. Okay. And the reason why it's hard to spot is because a lot of times, at least for me, is that it's usually at breakout areas where you'll have a false breakout. You got to go up to go down, and you'll break out. You'll go long. You get trapped, and then you have to sell, and the downside continues, and then you like crap, and you try to get short, and then it reverses, and you go long, and you lose again, and you just kind of get in this emotional roller coaster at those breakout points. It's kind of tend to what happens to a lot of folks. So, what I've been doing is trying to get better markers at designating what is a trend and what isn't a trend. And one of the things that's helped me with that is look at value areas. Is that look at the previous day's value areas, or there might be a longer term or higher time frame value area that you're at that's using support. And so I like to use those markers as a way to figure out whether you're balanced or trending, if that makes sense.
No, definitely.
And
That's
so going back to that day when we had that big up move and then the big down move, the one of the markers that really worked out, and one of the things I'm working on is how the seller exhaustion happened at the value area high after a breakout. And that price kept coming down, the seller's exhausted rate at the value area, and how that marker kind of set it up for that big move. 'Cause at the time, that marker was at like 54.80, and then the market went all the way up to 55.30, 32 and some change. So, pretty much a 50-point move after that. So, looking at, the project that I'm looking at is building next video is seeing how we can use those exhaustions at these key levels and being able to see this really well on Bookmap versus a candlestick. Because that's I think that if you look at a candlestick chart, you can interpret the data way differently and think that it's about ready to roll over and go short. In my candlestick days, I would have been looking for a short here. But with my Bookmap days, I'm now able to see that the seller's exhausting I see that the buyers are not yet taking control, but the sellers, they're done. You know, they've thrown in the towel, and you can't necessarily see that on a candlestick, or at least I can't. You know, some people can. They might have that sense and that feel of it, but you know, that's cool. If you can, I can't. So,
But yeah, that's some key topics. I think we hit on a lot of stuff here.
cool,
Is
man.
there
I
anything
hope
else
it.
you'd like to share with the
Uh,
audience?
oh, I was a young sharecropper from the west. No,
No, I think this was good. I enjoyed talking. I think it was very
I
helpful. I
think
learned
I
some
got
things from
rambling a
you.
couple of times. I didn't mean to, man, but you know, my brain is. You'll have to forgive this brain. Sometimes I get thinking in my head one way, and then I'll go down a path because I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't answer your question. I got off on a tangent.